You're watching this video, so the chances are great that you enjoy what we create here at the Audrain. And if you do, why not take the next step and subscribe to this channel? You might also consider a membership in the Audrain Automobile Museum. We mount 4 new exhibitions each year featuring cars from the Audrain collections and loans from some of the leading collectors and institutions around the world. Click here to find out more.
You know, I forget how long ago 2009 was. It just seems like last Thursday to me. But technology moves so quickly. This car is a 2009 Mercedes-Benz SL65 AMG. I think that's the correct title.
That's right, AMG Black Series.
Black Series. This is their performance model. You know, it's so funny. This is a classic case of buying a 1960 Jaguar XK150. Oh, and then the 61, the XKE came out. I should have bought that. And there was, for all intents and purposes, a performance version of this. It had the same V12, the same twin turbo. It was about 606 or 7 horsepower, something like that. Quite fast. It didn't look quite as aggressive as this model. They updated the nose. They wanted to make it more of a performance car.
Well, this is very much more of a performance car than the regular SL65 AMG, because this car looks like a typical SL with a retractable hardtop, but it's actually a fixed roof.
Right.
And the body, the fenders are different. It's got lighter weight components. This is really a true performance model.
And the other funny thing is, I got in and I put it in reverse. I immediately looked at the center screen, and of course nothing happened because there were no backup cameras in 2009, at least that I know of. I mean, I'm sure there were some, but that was considered, it's got a camera in the back.
Not in a car like this. I mean, there were backup cameras in a few pickup trucks at the time, and for the purely practical reasons of when you're backing up a trailer or something like that, you want a little extra assistance. One of the other comments that you made when we first got in is like, gee, what's that? The slot for the card for the navigation. Right. Which goes to another thing that we don't think of today, because navigation is all updated via satellite.
Right, I know.
You don't have to load in new maps.
I know, it is funny, yeah.
It's the constant war of the manufacturers to deliver an even greater driving experience. Right. And what's great about this car, of course, is the fact that when Mercedes does a performance model, it's not just sort of turning up the wick on the horsepower and leaving it at that, but the fact that everything is so carefully tuned. So it's really very much a package, and it feels like Mercedes.
It really steps out. It really is something. And another thing was, when the other version came out, I saw critics considered it too, I hate to use the word feminine, but that's the word that they used at the time.
Not aggressive enough for a performance car.
Not aggressive enough for a performance car. Yeah. So hence you got the wheel flares, you got the new, more aggressive front end, and as you mentioned, all the carbon fiber, which keeps it that much lighter. I mean, it is a wonderful car to drive. I don't really miss the dual clutch transmission, although when I drive one with it, it does seem crisper and sharper, but it doesn't detract from this. This
is a very well-matched automatic transmission.
Especially as a road car.
Right.
It's just phenomenal.
And it also speaks, and will speak, as you will see, in the not so tenuous connection in today's episode with the other two cars that we have on this episode, a Ferrari 599 GTO and a Chiron Sport Bugatti. So they will each represent something which you will see quite clearly in the drive and in the house we're going to go see.
Yeah, I'm anxious to do it because I'm curious. When two performance cars have a $2.5 million difference, you know, that's interesting. How much is it really? $2.5 million better? Is it $2.5 million faster? You know, it's curious to see.
One of the top 50 greatest car events in the world returns, the Audrain Newport Concours and Motor Weeks. Join our chair, Jay Leno. Unforgettable cars in legendary settings. Cars on the road, cars on display, spectacular locations, exclusive bespoke events. Free events open to the public, something for every member of the family. Tickets on sale now.
It's amazing how much effort goes into a steering wheel. This is really a comfortable wheel. It's flat at the bottom so your knees don't hit it. The grip is nice on it. It's really, when you push this thing, boy, it does give you a kick in the back. And yet, it's got all the Mercedes things, you know. I remember when the Mercedes McLaren, the SLR came out, a lot of people complained it was too much Mercedes and not enough McLaren. Because I know when I got mine, I don't really need an electric seat to move my butt forward or backward. I mean, I move it the day I get it, and then I never set it again. So why do I need an electric motor that weighs 7 pounds with all the wiring and everything else? Why don't you just reach down? So, but being Mercedes, there are certain things that are expected.
Exactly.
So you have to have that.
It's something that we will see that is actually shared with all the cars that we'll be driving today, which is a capability factor that goes beyond what their basic need and requirements are, and which we'll see in the house we're going to go see, which is a classic French chateau.
Oh, okay.
In the most elegant and formal style, but yet very Newport, and also quite interestingly, a fairly late house. You've got one of the last of the great cottages built here in Newport. Seafair, built in 1936. This is a house a decade older than that, but something which is very interesting in the way it combines the classic with the modern. So let's take a look.
All right. Beautiful day.
Indeed it is. And Jay, why, you might ask, is this house called Bois Doré?
I didn't ask that, but okay, why?
Because of this wonderful alley of linden trees that we just came through in the driveway.
Of course.
And the linden is considered a golden wood, hence the French Bois Doré.
Bois Doré. Oh,
let's take a look at the house.
Let's go look at the house. Wow.
A French country chateau.
Very French. You know, I'm going to sit in my Citroën and eat croissants.
Or a pain au chocolat.
Oh, yes, aussi.
Peut-être. So this, Jay, is very typical of what the architect Charles A. Platt envisioned for this house for William Fonestock, a New York banker. This house is, like your home, as I mentioned before, one of the later of the cottages, created in 1927, and yet it still is very, very much a classic house. Platt has expressed the classical symmetrical form of the French country house. As you notice, it's exactly balanced on either side, and the limestone is the typical construction material used in houses of this type. It literally could be anywhere in the French countryside. And it also is designed to live in the way that people were now living in this time. You know, it's post income tax, but still people are very secure in their fortunes. So unlike a house like the Breakers, this is only a 19,000 square foot house, with a 2,000 square foot ballroom, 25 bedrooms.
But 25.
25, but designed for a scaled down life.
Right.
So it's something that is quite wonderful that you see that the current owners of this house, the architectural pair of Fairfax and Salmons, are in the process of restoring and renovating the home to its wonderful glory.
Well, that's great that they don't modernize it. I've seen so many of these houses where they just put a it looks like some garden apartment inside. You know, everything's white and it's just awful. Well, this is nice because the real, I think, joy to a house like this is all the detail. You walk in, you just look at the ceiling. How often do you walk in a modern home and look up? Because there's nothing to see. But here, it's just fantastic. Yeah.
And of course, the French country style with these big open windows were really something that Charles Platt specialized in, because he actually started as a landscape painter and studied landscape design. He was very inspired on a trip to Italy, and he came back to the US and began to design gardens for people, which at the time they were doing very park-like gardens. Think sort of Central Park, the Olmsted look. And he thought a more formal approach, like the row of linden trees and boxed gardens, etc., would lend a more refined air to the country house here in the US.
Now, is any relation to Platt the actor? There's an Oliver Platt the actor.
He's Oliver Platt's great-grandfather, in fact.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Isn't that funny? So the art thing carries through there.
Exactly.
Cool.
So let's take a look at some of the other rooms in this house that define this space. The wonderful way that the rooms line up with each other is typically French.
Let's do it.
Let's look. Although not original to the 1927 build of the house, here in the dining room, these wonderful trompe-l'oeil paintings on the walls are just absolutely wonderful and really fit the spirit of the house so well.
They do. My complaint, if I had one, it's not a cozy house. The rooms are so large, it doesn't seem like you could even fill them to make them cozy, you know what I mean?
Again, this is the jazz age. What you want to do is fill your rooms. Imagine this room filled with 30 or 40 people, all sipping cocktails, thinking that the good times are never going to end. After all, it's 1927. What do we have to look forward to?
You got 18 months, yeah.
Exactly, things are good.
Yeah, then it's a big depression, pal. Take a hike.
Well, I'm going to show you a room. This is going to be Jay's favorite room in this house, because we know what you love. You love warm and cozy.
I like a good library. To me,
Let's take a look.
Like sitting in a small room with a fireplace and a library.
I've got a room for you.
You know me well. This is my favorite room so far.
Exactly. Cozy, warm, a marble fireplace.
I like dark wood, marble fireplace. And it's just small enough so you can heat it up really good with a fire. Nice fire going in here.
This is a place to spend a nice winter's day by the ocean.
Yeah, very nice, very nice.
And again, it's also one of those typical features of a French country house that they all had small offices and libraries where the owners could retreat from the maddening guests and crowds. So it's
I know how they feel. Yeah.
So all in all, I think that this is a really interesting take, this home, on the traditional French country house, but for a jazz age aesthetic.
Yeah, it's interesting. It does seem very French. I don't see the jazz part where that comes into play. I mean, it seems very French, and I guess if you fill it with musicians, but you know what I'm saying? But I don't see the jazz era influence in the house. It still looks 1880 French to me.
It is the influence of the modern times, because it's a large house, but it's not a big palace like the Breakers or Ochre Court. It's a house that's a more livable size, but it's also a house built for entertaining.
Yeah, but it is a smaller palace. I mean, it is a palace. It's just not as big.
A palace for the modern times.
I guess that's true. The rooms seem almost too big for me. This is the perfect size room. I like this because you have another person. You can talk without shouting. You're not shouting across.
What do you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not quite sure.
I rest my case.
Well, let's take a look at an example of what I think is a great expression of the traditional brought into the modern age.
All right, let's do it.
This time, our Ferrari.
This is more like it.
Well, we'll take a look, Jay, at how classicism steps into the modern age. with this Ferrari 599. Well, Jay, we're in another manufacturer's interpretation of high performance in more or less the same period, this 2011 Ferrari 599 GTO.
You know, it's funny, I think this is one of those cars that I don't think got the recognition it deserved.
Not at all.
When it came out, I remember there was a huge deal about the Enzo and how unbelievable it was. The Enzo was an excellent car, high performance. This harkens back to the famous GTO of '64. They thought it important enough to take the name and put it on this car. It's faster than an Enzo, more powerful than an Enzo. Yet in most people's mind, I mean, obviously it's a Ferrari, it's a GTO, but it doesn't have the cachet of the Enzo seems to have captured the public's imagination as being the high-end car. And I think these are probably still less money secondhand than an Enzo, isn't that correct?
Oh, certainly, that's the case. And it's interesting because, you know, so much in the high performance supercar realm is also about sort of visual attitude. One of the reasons why I love this car is because the shape of the 599 is such a classic Ferrari front engine GT shape.
Right.
And, you know, you think about the Daytona and the 275 GTB4 and this car, and so it doesn't have that sort of extreme supercar look of the Enzo, so therefore people think, well, what can it do?
Right, but there's a lot of science and technology in this, and the engine's a little further back.
Correct.
So would it be fair to call it a front engine, mid-engine?
Front mid-engine, absolutely.
Yeah.
Front mid-engine
you know, so
configuration.
consequently, it handles. I don't know if it handles better than an Enzo, but it's what Americans think a Ferrari or a Corvette or even a Mustang. We like those front engine automobiles.
You know, we have this discussion often, you and I, Jay, about configurations. Front engine, front mid-engine, rear mid-engine, and rear engine all have their great attributes, and they deliver performance in a different way. And I think for a car like this, it is a matter of being able to become more comfortable more quickly with the way it handles. Because for me, front mid-engine is my preferred configuration.
Right.
Kind of guy.
Right.
Kind of bloke, I should say. Right?
Yeah.
But
anyway, back to this thing. I think this is a very impressive car. Yet, I mean, obviously it was impressive when it came out, and people did go crazy. Just not as crazy. Do you know what I'm saying? Does it seem like it's sort of been looked over?
It has indeed been very well overlooked, and it's one of those things that, you know, obviously GTO, we all think of the 1964 250 GTO, but there was also, of course, the 288 GTO, which was a tremendous car, and you know, when this car, the way it feels, is just amazing. You know, again, one of the reasons why I love this car, and I say this all the time, I love new cars or fairly new cars, contemporary cars, that feel like old cars. This car has a lightness that so many new cars don't have. And the comparison with being in this car and being in the Mercedes is dramatic as well. Because the Mercedes, we loved it because of its Mercedes-ness. This feels like a Ferrari.
Right.
It is so much lighter on its toes and the way it feels.
Well, let's see what we have here. We have a V12.
It's a V12, 661 horsepower, just like the twin turbo Mercedes.
Right. Oh yeah, that Ferrari sound. Che bella machine. Yeah, it's great. It's very impressive.
So I think that Ferrari did a wonderful job with this car, and not just because I'm a Ferrari owner, but this car is so much of the essence of the brand. Do you not agree?
It is. And I think if you get a chance to buy one of these, I would pick it up because, although not inexpensive,
no,
it's not as expensive as some other models of which it is superior. I would prefer this over the Enzo.
Absolutely. Far more usable, much better value. Now let's check out the Chiron. There is a direct connection between this car and the house we're visiting today.
Really? I can't imagine what the direct connection is.
I'm pretending I care about the connection.
Well, Jay, certainly coming from Bois Doré, it's very appropriate that we are now in our last car, which is a French car.
Right. Well, you know, the fascinating thing, it's amazing how electronics can hide weight. I mean, this car is a very heavy car, especially for a high-performance sports car. Yet all the electronic aids make it feel like a Lotus Elan almost. I mean, not quite, but I mean, everything is so light to the touch, and you have such instantaneous. You've got 1,500 horsepower.
1,500 horsepower.
I remember
from a very complex engine.
Yeah, when the Veyron was introduced. Veyron now is going on 20 years old. It's almost hard to believe. But I met Ferdinand Peak, who was head of VW and that whole group, and they had Bugatti. He told them, I want 1,000 horsepower. And I remember some of the engineers sort of revolted. That's impossible. He put his foot, no, you're doing it. And with, I don't know, 11 radiators, I mean, just all kinds of stuff. You've got here a V16, 8 liter.
W16.
I mean, I'm sorry, you're correct.
Yes.
A W16, which is not as sexy look as a Cadillac 16. No. But incredibly efficient engine. Really just two V8s kind of stuck together, to put it the most simplistic way. Well, that's not really fair either. But an amazing engineering achievement.
Yes.
Because 16 cylinders and 1,000 horsepower in the Veyron makes so much heat. I think this is probably a more efficient version of the Veyron. It's easier to make. And you know what's so funny to me about it is it's sold the way they always sold cars. By that I mean this car is $2 million. What is new? $2,998,000.
Because that's all. You can't cross the $3 million threshold because the different search parameters come in.
It just makes me laugh that they're going for, oh, honey, it's not even $3 million.
Change back from a $3 million bill.
Right, exactly. I mean, it is fun to drive. It feels very light on its feet, especially if you're just blasting around town. I think if you're on a track, you might see where a proper sports car might better it. But
well, you know, that gets back to a thing that we talk about a lot, which is what the sort of package, the envelope of performance is, power to weight ratio. As you mentioned, this is a very, very heavy car, but it's also a very powerful car.
Right.
So you get the same levels of performance, in this case, obviously greater levels of performance, because this is designed to be an extreme performance car.
Right. It's almost like the Hellcat theory.
Right.
Okay, we don't care. If you make it heavier, just add on more horsepower.
Precisely.
Don't worry about the way. And you know something, a Hellcat, it works, because to me, that's the great American road car, the Hellcat. You get in that thing, it's got a big, comfortable chair. It's literally like a living room chair you're sitting in. And to go LA to Vegas nonstop in 4.5 hours, whatever it is, with your foot to the floor, it's a lot of fun. It's just it's got road hugging weight, which hugs the road. And if you don't go over maybe 7/10, it's more than fast enough. You know, 2019 to me seems like yesterday, but it's half a decade ago.
Exactly.
And when I do this, it takes a minute to kick down.
Well, even with quad turbos.
Yeah, if you got 4 turbos.
Yeah.
Now, if I step down manually, whoa, there you go. Yeah, if you shift down manually, you're okay. It handles. I mean,
Yeah, it seems like it responds immediately.
Yeah.
It's funny, in my experience in driving this and the Veyron, I actually sort of like the Veyron more. It's not as sophisticated a car as this, but somehow this car, the way it's set up, it sort of wants to go faster and faster.
But I like that feeling. See, that's the reason I like it. That's what I'm paying for.
The Veyron gives you a little bit, gives me at least, a little bit more of sort of satisfaction at 50 or 60 miles per hour than this car. This car says, okay, yeah, I'll go 60 just for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. This island is not the place for this car, but it is, because you could go to the market or anywhere with it. Just don't.
Yeah, you can go to the market with this because it's got so much trunk room. Go to the market and pick up a jar of olives.
Yeah, a jar of olives. Or Grey Poupon.
Exactly. But it is very much demonstrative of the not so tenuous connection that I think I've established with this episode. Like our home, Bois Doré, built in the Jazz Age in a traditional country French style. All three of the cars we've had today are cars that look back at the traditional strengths of their manufacturers, but look forward in performance and capability.
All right, let's go see how good this tenuous connection is.